Parquet floors are a mosaic of geometric-shaped pieces of wood that form a repetitive block pattern. They date back to the palaces and grand homes of 17th century France, where they were welcomed as an easier-to-maintain, yet still decorative alternative to the marble floors of the day. Traditional parquet floor patterns range from a simple paving stone style to Parquet de Versailles, the complex pattern of large diagonal squares that debuted at France's Versailles Palace in 1684. To produce it, manufacturers begin with long planks of oak just over an inch thick. This particular company produces only custom orders and sizes the motif in proportion to the room. A worker first measures and marks the dimensions of the pattern pieces that will be cut from each plank. Then, with a circular saw, another worker cuts the required length and width. This yields several pieces, which together will form the pattern's crisscrossing rectangles. A worker now runs each piece through a machine called a molder. Just one pass does four things. It thins the piece to just under an inch, squares all the sides, smooths all the surfaces, and it makes a groove on each side. This next machine removes an equal amount of wood from the top and bottom of one end of the piece to form a centered quarter-inch thick projection called a tenon. When assembling the pattern, the workers will ultimately insert tenons into slots in adjoining pieces. These slots are called mortises. This machine cuts the mortises. The floor is an assembly of square panels, each one containing a set number of crisscrossing rectangles and diagonal squares within the frame. The frame pieces also have tenons and mortises. The squares, however, are different. Workers use a router to form a tongue on all four sides. The tongue fits into the groove on the rectangular pieces. Once the tongues are in the grooves and the mortises are in the tenons, not a single nail or drop of glue will secure those joints. They'll be held together the traditional way with oak pegs. Each panel assembles like a puzzle. The 43 components fit together with a few taps of a hammer. A pencil mark indicates the nicer side of each piece of wood so that it can be placed face up. The tongues of the squares slide into the grooves of the crisscrossing rectangles, which join by mortise and tenon. The frame pieces attach to each other and to the perimeter of the interior assembly, also by mortise and tenon. A worker now transfers the assembled panel to a press, which clamps it tightly together. Next, he drills 2 holes through each tenon and then hammers a wooden peg through each hole to lock the tenon in the mortise. No one wants their antique-style parquet floor to look brand new. So the next step is to lightly sandblast the panel surface to make the wood look worn with time. Another worker goes over the panel with an electric sander to soften the surface for the next step, which is to randomly scatter some sand and work it in with a wood block attachment on the sander. This process creates an antique appearance and worn-in look. After brushing off the sand, the worker scratches up the surface with a rotating wire brush. The panel now looks like it could be from a centuries-old French chateau. The last step is to finish the wood. First, a coat of stain for color. Then a coat of oil to protect the wood from moisture. And finally, a coat of hot wax, which gives the surface a rich luster. These steps also highlight the contrasting grains of the wood, due to certain pieces having been cut from the tree horizontally and others vertically. This intricacy